Before the longships, before the sagas, before the name Viking echoed in fear across the known world, there was just the land. A land of stone and ice, of deep dark waters and forests that swallowed the sun. This is where our story begins, not with the clash of steel, but with the quiet, relentless struggle against a world that gave little and demanded everything. Imagine a time when the world was smaller, more intimate, yet infinitely more dangerous. The fjords, those majestic fingers of the sea reaching deep into the land, were not tourist vistas. They were barriers. Glistening, black-watered canyons carved by ancient ice, they separated one small community from the next. To travel between valleys was an epic journey in itself, a perilous trek over wind-scoured mountains, or a risky voyage across choppy, unpredictable waters. Isolation wasn't just a fact of life. It was the very fabric of existence. Your world was your valley, your farmstead, your clan. Everyone else was a stranger, and the land itself, it was a grudging host. The soil was thin, a mere dusting over a foundation of ancient granite. Farming was an act of defiant optimism. Every year, families would clear the stones, their hands raw, their backs aching, coaxing meager crops of barley and rye from the stubborn earth. A good harvest meant survival through the winter. A poor harvest meant starvation. There was no room for error, no second chances. Every seed planted was a prayer, every sprout a fragile miracle. The earth did not yield its bounty easily. It had to be earned, fought for, and defended. Then came the winter. Not just a season, but a living entity. A great white beast that descended from the north to smother the world. The sun, a fleeting visitor in the summer, would vanish for months, leaving the land in a perpetual twilight. The days grew short, then disappeared entirely into the polar night. Snow would fall, not in gentle flurries, but in blinding blizzards that buried farmsteads and erased paths. The cold was a physical presence, a predator that seeped through the thick timber walls of the longhouse, that stole the warmth from your breath, that could freeze a man solid if he strayed too far from the hearth. Life retreated indoors. Families and livestock huddled together in the smoky confines of the longhouse, the air thick with the smell of burning peat, damp wool, and animals. For months on end, this was their universe. Time stretched and warped in the endless dark. It was a period of immense psychological pressure. Tempers could fray and anxieties could fester in the gloom. Yet it was also a time of deep connection. It was here, around the crackling fire, that stories were told. Sagas of gods and giants, of heroes and monsters were woven into the minds of the young. Skills were passed down, the carving of wood, the mending of tools, the weaving of cloth. The winter was a forge, and it tempered not steel but the human spirit. In this world of scarcity and hardship, a unique culture began to take shape. It wasn't born of philosophy or abstract ideals, but of brutal necessity. When your neighbor's survival could mean your own, loyalty wasn't a choice, it was the foundation of society. A person's word, their bond, was everything. An oath sworn was unbreakable, because in a land where a single betrayal could lead to the collapse of a community, trust was the most valuable currency. Your clan was your shield, your family, your strength. To be exiled, to become a person without a clan, was a fate worse than death. It meant facing the unforgiving world utterly alone. Honor or hider became the core of their identity. It was a complex blend of reputation, respect, and personal integrity. You earned honor through your actions by being a generous host, a reliable friend, a brave protector, and a person who kept their promises. To lose your honor was to lose your standing, to become less than a person in the eyes of your peers. This intense focus on reputation meant that insults could not be ignored, and debts, whether of kindness or of injury, were always repaid. It created a society that was fiercely protective of its own and deeply suspicious of outsiders. And of course, there was strength. Not just the physical strength to swing an axe or pull an oar, but the inner strength, the endurance to survive. To wake up every day in the biting cold and face the relentless chores, to endure hunger, to watch the sky for signs of a worsening storm, to live with the constant gnawing uncertainty of it all. Children were not coddled, they were raised to be resilient, to understand the harsh realities of their world from a young age. They learned that life was a struggle, and that weakness was a luxury they simply could not afford. Discipline, self-reliance, and a stoic acceptance of fate were not just virtues, they were survival skills. This was the crucible that forged the people we would later call the Vikings. They were not born raiders. They were farmers, fishers, hunters, and traders, ground down and hardened by a land that demanded constant vigilance. For generations, they looked inward, their lives dictated by the rhythm of the seasons and the demands of their unforgiving home. They mastered their environment, learning to build sturdy homes, to store food for the long winter, to navigate the treacherous terrain of their own lands. They honed their skills as woodworkers, blacksmiths, and sailors out of pure necessity. But a spirit forged in such a fire cannot be contained forever. The population grew, and the thin soil could only provide so much. The small, scattered farmsteads became crowded. Ambition, a trait that had been essential for survival, began to look for new outlets. The same resilience that allowed them to endure the endless winter, the same boldness required to hunt in the dark forests, the same discipline needed to build a life from stone and ice, began to stir. They stood on the shores of their fjords, looking out at the vast grey expanse of the North Sea. For generations, the sea had been a source of food, a local highway, and a constant, menacing presence. But now they began to see it differently. They had mastered the building of ships to navigate their own treacherous coastlines. Their vessels, the ancestors of the famed longship, were strong, flexible, and capable. They had the courage, the desperation, and the skill. The sea was no longer a barrier. It was not an end to their world. For a people raised in a land of limits, the open ocean represented the one thing their home could not offer: a path without end, a horizon of pure possibility. It was the next logical step. The world beyond that grey water was unknown, but it couldn't be any more demanding than the world they already knew. With the strength of their ancestors in their hearts, and the skills of survival in their hands, they prepared to push off from the shore. The age of the farmer was ending. The age of the Viking was about to begin. Thank you for watching. If you found this journey into the past compelling, consider subscribing for more deep dives into history. We'd love to have you join our clan.